Scientists CT-scanned a 3,000-year-old mummy's skull. What they discovered shocked the world. Do you believe that some archaeological discoveries are so baffling that even scientists are left frozen, unable to explain them? What would you think if a mummy showed features that don't resemble a human at all? Or if an artifact thousands of years old contained symbols that no one has been able to decipher to this day? And if those mysteries aren't just random, could they be trying to send us a message from the past? Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ancient History channel. My friends, as you know, history isn't always as clear-cut as what we were taught in textbooks. Sometimes it's more like a vast labyrinth, where every new discovery raises more questions than answers. There are strange mummies, buried tombs, and artifacts marked by long-lost civilizations, all quietly whispering stories that modern humans still can't fully understand. And in today's journey, we're going to explore some of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries. Real stories that feel like something straight out of science fiction. From bodies with bizarre forms, to ancient paintings filled with puzzling symbols, to treasures buried for thousands of years, every detail might make you rethink what you once believed to be true. So, if you're someone who's curious, who loves uncovering the unknown, and isn't afraid to face mysteries without clear answers, then stay with us until the very end of this video. Who knows, you might be the one to notice something the rest of the world has missed. And now, without making you wait any longer, let's dive right into our very first discovery. 3,000-year-old mummy was taken to a hospital for a CT scan. The results left everyone stunned. My friends, have you ever imagined that one day, ancient mummies, the kind we usually only see in movies or museums, would be brought straight into a modern hospital for a checkup? It sounds strange, right? Maybe even a little unsettling. But this story is completely real, and its outcome will definitely make you rethink everything you thought you knew. You see, whenever people talk about mummies, they often picture bodies wrapped in linen, lying motionless in coffins, hands crossed over their chest, carrying secrets that have never been fully uncovered. But here's the thing. Beneath those wrappings, it's not always a human body. And that's exactly what led to one of the most shocking discoveries. This story begins at the National Maritime Museum of Israel. There, researchers decided to take two ancient coffins, believed to contain the mummified remains of children from ancient Egypt, dating back about 3,000 years, to a city hospital for CT scans. Just hearing that is enough to spark curiosity, isn't it? Because when modern science meets ancient history, any secret can be revealed. At first, everything suggested that the coffins contained the remains of children. Their small size, their shape, and even earlier records indicated that one of the mummies still had a preserved heart inside. But when the CT images appeared, everything changed. There was no child inside. Instead, what they found was grain. Yes, you heard that right. The child mummy that people had believed in for so long was actually made of mud and grains. A special type of mummy known as a grain mummy. These were carefully crafted to resemble real mummies, even given names as if they were once living beings. So the question is, why would the ancient Egyptians create something like this? According to experts, these unusual mummies may represent Osiris, the god of the afterlife in Egyptian mythology. They weren't just objects, they carried deep spiritual meaning, symbolizing life, death, and rebirth. Hearing this, you can probably start to sense just how complex ancient Egyptian beliefs really were. But the story doesn't end there. The second coffin brought another surprise. When doctors examined it, they discovered that it didn't contain a human either. It held the mummified remains of a bird, most likely a falcon. And this opened up an entirely new way of understanding this ancient civilization. In ancient Egyptian society, the falcon was no ordinary animal. It was closely associated with Horus, the god of the sky, a symbol of power, life, and rebirth. The Egyptians believed Horus observed the world through two special eyes, the right eye representing the sun and the left eye representing the moon. Because of this, the falcon was seen as a sacred protector. Now think about it. If a mummified bird was placed inside a coffin alongside symbols of death and the afterlife, could it really be just an animal? Or was it meant to guard and guide the soul of the deceased? In fact, the ancient Egyptians didn't just mummify humans. They also mummified many animals: dogs, cats, crocodiles, and especially birds. These mummies were often used in religious rituals, as people believed the gods could take the form of animals, or at least shared a deep connection with them. To them, death wasn't the end. On the contrary, it was simply a doorway to another life, a place where the soul still needed a home to exist, and that home was the preserved body. Because of this powerful belief, mummification became an essential part of daily life, even influencing the economy of ancient Egypt. Animals were bred, rituals were performed, and sacred objects were created to serve the journey into the afterlife. But returning to those two mysterious coffins, even to this day, no one can say for certain why they ended up in the museum. Were they offerings, religious symbols, or perhaps messages left behind by the pharaohs for future generations? The answer may still be out there, waiting to be discovered. So what do you think? What do these mummies truly represent? Leave your thoughts below, because who knows, you might be the one to offer a perspective no one has ever considered before. After all, none of us can predict what might be uncovered next, right? CT technology reveals the true face of a famous ancient Egyptian pharaoh's mummy, sealed for thousands of years. As you know, for centuries, mummies have remained one of the greatest mysteries of ancient Egyptian civilization. People are both fascinated and cautious, because each layer of linen wrapped around a body doesn't just conceal a person, it preserves an untold story. And when it comes to the mummies of pharaohs, the most powerful rulers of their time, those secrets become even more difficult to uncover. One remarkable case is the mummy of Amenhotep I, who ruled Egypt about 3,500 years ago. What's truly astonishing is that although his mummy was discovered as far back as 1881, for more than a century afterward, archaeologists did not dare unwrap the outer layers. It wasn't because they lacked curiosity, but because they understood that even the smallest mistake could permanently damage this priceless relic. But then, modern science opened an entirely new path. Instead of physically unwrapping the mummy, Egyptian scientists turned to 3D CT scanning, a non-invasive method that allows researchers to see through the layers without causing any harm. And from that moment on, an extraordinary journey of discovery began. When the first images appeared, researchers were nearly holding their breath. For the first time in thousands of years, the body of this pharaoh was revealed to the modern world, but in a completely different way. No cutting, no physical contact, yet every detail gradually emerged with astonishing clarity. According to the analysis, Pharaoh Amenhotep I stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall and died at the age of 35. Not a particularly old age, especially for a king. This has led many to wonder, what exactly happened to him? Interestingly, after careful examination, scientists found no signs of fatal injuries. In other words, the cause of his death remains a mystery. Beyond that, CT technology also revealed physical features that no one could have imagined before. He was described as having a narrow chin, a small and slender nose, curly hair, and relatively healthy teeth. In fact, his upper teeth protruded slightly, a very human detail that makes this ancient pharaoh feel unexpectedly relatable. Notably, researchers also discovered that he had been circumcised, a common practice in ancient Egyptian society, carrying deep religious and cultural significance. But that's not all. Hidden within the wrappings were as many as 30 carefully placed amulets, along with a unique golden belt positioned around his waist. These items were not only valuable in material terms, but also held profound spiritual meaning, believed to protect the pharaoh's soul on its journey to the afterlife. Hearing this, can you feel yourself slowly stepping into the world of ancient Egypt? However, not everything discovered was perfectly preserved. Scientists observed several damages on the mummy's body, but notably, these did not occur before his death. Instead, they were most likely caused by ancient tomb robbers. And then comes a surprising detail. More than 400 years later, priests carried out restoration work on the mummy, repairing the damage and preserving it with great care. This shows that, no matter how much time had passed, the ancient Egyptians always held deep respect for their pharaohs. The story of Amenhotep I is not just a scientific discovery. It is a bridge between the past and the present. Thanks to modern technology, we are no longer just looking at a mummy. We are witnessing a human being, a king who once lived, ruled, and was revered. Isn't that truly incredible? 1,900-year-old mummy hid a secret inside that left everyone speechless. There's an interesting truth that many people overlook. Sometimes, the greatest secrets of history aren't in what we can see, but in what has been most carefully hidden. And to prove that point, let me tell you a story like no other. A story that only modern technology has allowed us to see through, reaching back nearly 2,000 years into the past. To help you picture it, imagine this. Right in front of you is an ancient Egyptian mummy, still completely wrapped in its original linen, untouched since the day it was buried. In that situation, what would you do? Would you unwrap it to find answers, or leave it intact to preserve it? For centuries, this very question puzzled scientists. And it wasn't until recently that a team of researchers from Northwestern University found an answer in a way no one expected. They didn't open the mummy. Instead, they used powerful X-rays combined with CT scanning technology, a method that allows them to see through every layer without causing any damage. And from that moment on, secrets that had long been silent began to reveal themselves. Using this advanced technology, the team examined an ancient Egyptian mummy that is about 1,900 years old. When the images appeared, the first thing that surprised experts was the identity of the body inside. It wasn't a noble nor a powerful figure. It was a little girl about 5 years old. Just hearing that makes everything feel heavier, doesn't it? In the midst of a great civilization, among pyramids and mighty pharaohs, there existed the story of a small child, carefully buried and preserved for thousands of years. Thanks to high-resolution X-ray imaging, scientists were able to clearly observe the condition inside her body. They found that her skeleton was largely intact, with no signs of trauma or severe injury. This led them to a reasonable conclusion. She likely died from illness rather than from an accident or violence. But what makes this story even more remarkable lies in a deeply spiritual detail. The girl was buried with a scarab amulet. In ancient Egyptian culture, the scarab beetle was not just an ordinary insect. It symbolized rebirth and protection. The Egyptians believed such an amulet would guide and safeguard the soul of the deceased on its journey to the afterlife. And the fact that a child was buried with it shows just how much faith and love her family placed in her. As researchers continued their analysis, even more details emerged. For example, the girl had no permanent teeth yet, a clear sign of her young age. Her height, measuring only about 36.9 inches from head to toe, further emphasized the fragility of a life that ended far too soon. Not only that, but the outer linen wrapping also impressed scientists. Though only about 0.2 inches thick, it was enough to preserve the body for nearly 2 millennia. This demonstrates that ancient Egyptian mummification techniques were not only sophisticated, but remarkably durable over time. Then came another surprising discovery. Experts found a total of 36 needle-like objects placed around the body. Of these, 11 were located around the head and neck, 20 near the feet, and 5 along the torso. These objects may have been related to religious rituals or a special preservation method. However, their true meaning remains not fully understood to this day. You see, the more we uncover, the more questions arise instead of answers. What's most remarkable is that all of these discoveries were made without unwrapping the mummy. This marks the first time an intact mummy has been examined using modern X-ray and CT technology. A major breakthrough that not only helps preserve ancient artifacts, but also opens a new path for archaeology. The mummy of this young girl was excavated at Hawara around 1910 to 1911. This site dates back to the 1st century AD, a time when Egypt was under Roman rule. Since then, the mummy has become part of the collection at the Northwestern University Museum of Art. A long journey from the depths of the ancient earth to a modern laboratory. And now, as its secrets slowly come to light, we are no longer just looking at a mummy, we are witnessing the story of a child who once lived in history. Isn't that truly fascinating? Strange female mummies in Vietnam, resting for hundreds of years, yet astonishingly well preserved. My friends, when people hear the word mummy, they often think of distant Egypt, with its massive pyramids and powerful pharaohs. But did you know that in Vietnam, a small land with a long and heroic history, there are also mummies that have amazed scientists? Not only because of their incredible state of preservation, but also because of the treasures buried alongside them. It may sound hard to believe, right? But the deeper you go into these stories, the more you'll realize that history can feel much closer than we think. Our first story takes us to Ho Chi Minh City, the second largest city in Vietnam. In 1994, an ancient tomb was discovered in the Som Kai area of District 5. What immediately surprised people was its depth. It lay nearly 26 feet underground. It took 15 young men working continuously for 40 days just to reach the bottom. Just imagine that. If digging alone was that difficult, then this was clearly no ordinary construction. The tomb chamber was built from a solid compound as strong as fortress walls. Inside was a large coffin made from 2 layers of precious wood. When it was opened, archaeologists found 2 layers of woven mats and a sheet of dough paper more than 2 inches thick, a preservation method that still impresses experts today. Then came the most astonishing moment. Submerged in a reddish liquid resembling perfumed oil, the body inside was wrapped in 9 layers of clothing made from fine fabrics, silk, and brocade. It was a woman about 60 years old. Remarkably, her skin remained smooth and soft, her joints still flexible, with almost no signs of decomposition. A sight so extraordinary that it's hard to believe without seeing it firsthand. And that wasn't all. The tomb contained numerous gold and silver items, including a pair of golden shoes, clear evidence of the woman's high status. As expected, inscriptions on the artifacts helped identify her as Nguyen Thi Hue, a member of the royal family during the reign of Jia Long. Today, her mummy is preserved and displayed at the Ho Chi Minh City Museum of History. Turning back the clock to 1968, in Van Cat village in Nam Dinh province, another ancient tomb was excavated. This one followed a coffin-inside sarcophagus design with an outer casing nearly 12 inches thick, made from multiple layers of extremely durable compound. The inner coffin was crafted from precious woods such as engok am and ironwood, materials known for their strength. When opened, researchers were once again stunned. Inside was the body of another woman, also around 60 years old. Her skin was pale and smooth, her hair lightly graying but still soft. Most strikingly, her eyes still showed clear whites and pupils, and her blackened teeth remained intact. Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? And it didn't stop there. Her burial garments were overwhelming in number. 35 long robes made of silken brocade, 18 skirts, along with personal items such as paper fans, betel pouches, silk scarves, and even tobacco. On her chest lay a rosary of 101 dark wooden beads, along with 2 scriptures stored in a brocade pouch. After analysis, experts identified her as Pham Thai Dang, the wife of a high-ranking official in ancient Vietnam. But there's yet another story, perhaps even more unusual. In 1957, in Thanh Hoa province, a tomb containing a mummy was discovered, though it had already been disturbed by locals. The body had been removed from its coffin, left in an open field for 3 days, then reburied in waterlogged conditions for nearly a month. Anyone would assume the mummy had been severely damaged. But when archaeologists re-excavated it, they could hardly believe their eyes. The mummy remained intact, and even more surprisingly, it emitted a fragrant scent of preservation oils. Even after being washed 5 times with clean water, the scent did not disappear. In fact, the surrounding soil retained the fragrance for quite some time. Based on inscriptions and remaining evidence, experts concluded that this was a consort from the Trine family, buried around the 17th century. Although only a few artifacts remained, they were enough to reflect her wealth and status. Through these 3 stories, we can see that ancient Vietnamese people possessed highly sophisticated preservation techniques, ones that rivaled any civilization in the world. So what do you think made these mummies last for hundreds of years in such remarkable condition? Was it technique, environment, or something science still cannot fully explain? Leave your thoughts, because who knows, you might be the one to uncover the answer to one of the most fascinating mysteries in Vietnamese history. 1,000-year-old mummy wearing shoes that look like Adidas. Hey, imagine this. One day you come across an ancient mummy, but on its feet is a pair of shoes that look just like something from the modern world. What would you think? You'd probably assume it only exists in science fiction, right? Well, if that's what you think, I'm afraid you'd be mistaken, because this discovery is completely real. In fact, it sparked intense debate among both scientists and the online community for quite some time. The story begins in 2016, when archaeologists conducted an excavation in the Altai Mountains of Mongolia, a region known for its harsh climate and year-round freezing conditions. Ironically, these extreme conditions act like a natural freezer, preserving ancient remains almost perfectly for centuries. During the excavation, researchers uncovered a remarkable tomb. Inside was a mummy dating back about 1,000 years. Initial analysis showed that the remains belonged to a woman who died between the ages of 30 and 40. But what caught the experts' attention wasn't just her age or the time period, it was the condition of her body. Specifically, the woman appeared to have suffered a severe head injury before her death. This detail led many to wonder, did she experience some kind of attack or tragic event in her final days? Alongside the body were numerous burial items, almost like a snapshot of her life. There was a horse, a saddle, a bag, 4 sets of clothing, a knife for protection, a comb, and even a mirror. These objects suggest she may have belonged to a person of status, while also offering a vivid glimpse into everyday life at that time. But then, one small detail stopped everyone in their tracks. It was the shoes. The shoes on the mummy's feet featured red and black stripes, a design that immediately reminded many people of modern Adidas footwear. When images of the discovery were released, the internet practically exploded. Some people were curious, others skeptical, and quite a few began proposing bold theories. Some even suggested this could be evidence of time travel. It sounds a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? But if you put yourself in their position, seeing what looks like modern-style shoes on a 1,000-year-old mummy, it's not hard to understand why such ideas emerged. Some imagined that the woman might have come from the future, bringing her familiar shoes with her, only to somehow become trapped in the past. And if that were true, it would be one of the most shocking pieces of evidence for time travel ever discovered. However, scientists offer a far less dramatic explanation. They point out that while the shoes may resemble modern Adidas designs, it's likely just a coincidence in style. Striped patterns have appeared throughout history in many different cultures, and there is no evidence suggesting these shoes came from modern times. In other words, the time travel theory remains purely speculative. Even so, this discovery is incredibly significant. It not only highlights the remarkable preservation made possible by harsh natural conditions, but also helps us better understand the clothing, culture, and daily life of people who lived 1,000 years ago. So what do you think? Are those shoes simply a coincidence? Or is there still something science hasn't fully explained yet? Deformed mummy shocks the world with 3 fingers, like something from another world. Throughout history, humans have often believed we understand our own species quite well, but every so often, a discovery comes along that makes us pause and ask, do we really know everything? This next story takes you to a place filled with mystery, Nazca, Peru, famous for its massive geoglyphs that still haven't been fully explained. But in 2017, what stirred global attention wasn't those lines. It was a strange mummy discovered there, a mummy with only 3 fingers. Experts named this mummy Maria. From the very first glance, Maria left people stunned. Not only did the hands have 3 unusually long fingers, but the skull was also elongated in an unusual way, and it even appeared to lack a typical human nasal opening. Just imagine standing in front of a body like that. What would you think? A human? A mutation? Or something entirely different? Scientists, of course, set out to find answers. They conducted a series of tests, from DNA analysis to carbon dating. The results showed that Maria was female and lived about 1,800 years ago. But what made things more complicated was her genetic structure. According to the research, about 98.5% of Maria's DNA belongs to primates, in other words, nearly human. But the remaining 1.5% doesn't match any known data in modern science. It may seem like a small fraction, but it opens the door to countless possibilities. One of the leading hypotheses suggests that Maria could belong to an unknown ancient human lineage, a branch of evolution that once existed but disappeared without leaving clear traces. Another, more controversial theory proposes something even more extraordinary, that Maria might be the result of a hybrid between humans and extraterrestrial life. It sounds like science fiction, but when faced with such an unusual form, it's not surprising that some people think this way. Of course, not everyone agrees. Many experts remain skeptical, arguing that this could simply be an elaborate hoax. According to them, the mummy may have been constructed using plaster or synthetic materials, designed to deceive the public and attract attention. This theory is partly based on the structure of the rib cage and skeleton, which show differences from typical human anatomy. So, the story circles back to the same question: Who or what is Maria? A mutated human? A forgotten species? A fabricated creation? Or genuine evidence of something beyond our current understanding? As of now, there is still no definitive answer. Each theory has its own arguments, but also its own unanswered questions. And perhaps that's what makes this story so fascinating, because sometimes it's the mysteries without answers that keep humanity searching. What do you think? Nearly intact, 16th century mummy of a man, buried alongside a mouse. In the world of archaeology, there are discoveries that simply make people say, "That's interesting." And then there are those that leave even scientists silent in thought. The story of a mummy that has existed for more than 400 years, still almost perfectly preserved and carrying secrets that remain unsolved to this day, is one of them. It comes from the small town of Guano in Ecuador. Back in 1949, researchers there discovered a mummy dating to the 16th century. From the very beginning, the find drew major attention because of the body's exceptional state of preservation, far beyond what anyone expected. But the story became truly fascinating years later when a French forensic pathologist, Philippe Charlier, began a deeper investigation. Now, Charlier is no stranger in the scientific world. He has studied many historical figures, even the remains associated with Adolf Hitler. So when he turned his attention to this mummy, many believed that secrets buried for centuries were finally about to be revealed, and they were. The first thing that amazed experts was the mummy's near-perfect condition. This level of preservation wasn't by chance. The region's naturally dry and cool environment acted like an ideal preservation chamber, preventing the man's body from decomposing over time. Thanks to these conditions, scientists were able to closely examine details about his health, something that isn't possible with most mummies. Then came an important discovery. According to Charlier's analysis, the man showed signs of a chronic illness, rheumatoid arthritis. This autoimmune disease causes joint swelling, pain, and gradual loss of mobility. Living with such a condition centuries ago, when medicine was still limited, must have been extremely difficult. But what stood out even more was his age. He is believed to have lived to around 85 to 90 years old, an exceptionally high age for that time period. This raised new questions among researchers. Did he belong to a higher social class with better living conditions? Or did he follow a unique lifestyle that contributed to his longevity? Just when things seemed intriguing enough, another detail changed everything. Right beside the mummy, experts found a mummified mouse. Yes, a mouse, not gold, not jewelry, but a small animal buried alongside the man. This discovery immediately sparked a wave of questions. Was it a coincidence? Part of a ritual? Or did the mouse carry some symbolic meaning that we still don't understand? To this day, no one has a definitive answer. The identity of the man remains unknown. The connection between him and the mouse is still unclear, and it's precisely these unanswered questions that make the story even more compelling. You see, history isn't just what has been recorded, it's also what has been left behind. The mysteries without answers, waiting quietly for the day they are finally uncovered. So what do you think? Why was this man buried with a mouse? Was it an ancient ritual, a spiritual belief, or simply a strange coincidence? Embroidered brocade robe with vultures found in an ancient tomb in China, a Persian imprint between China and an unsolved mystery. The story begins in a dry desert region at the foot of the Tian Shan Mountains in southern Xinjiang. This area has a unique climate, dry, cold, and almost completely lacking in humidity, an environment many archaeologists jokingly call a natural storage vault for history. Because of this, when excavations began, experts already suspected they might find a mummy. And indeed, after just a few days of digging, they did. But what truly stunned researchers wasn't the body, it was the clothing the individual was wearing. It was a brocade robe dating back to the Northern Song Dynasty, a period renowned for its exquisite textile craftsmanship. What made this garment especially remarkable was its design. Woven into the fabric was the image of a pair of vultures, positioned back to back, surrounded by highly detailed plant motifs. At first glance, it might seem ordinary, but look closer, and you'll notice something unusual. The design doesn't fully match traditional Chinese artistic styles. The robe features a cross collar and narrow sleeves made from triple-layered cotton fabric with patterns of arrows and spheres, details commonly seen during the Song dynasty. However, the arrangement of the motifs, and especially the imagery of vultures, shows a strong influence from ancient Persian art. Doesn't that seem a bit strange? A garment discovered in China, yet reflecting styles from Central Asia and even Western Asia. This suggests that cultural exchange between regions was far more dynamic thousands of years ago than we often imagine. Inside the robe, the lining is made of plain silk in a camel yellow color, while the cuffs feature floral and bird patterns, a style commonly associated with the Tang dynasty. All these elements come together to create an artifact that is not only visually stunning, but also rich in historical significance. But what puzzled researchers the most were two mysterious symbols found on the robe. No one has been able to definitively identify them. Some believe they could be local script, possibly directly related to the identity of the person buried in the tomb. If that's true, then deciphering these symbols could reveal who they were, where they came from, and why they were buried there. However, there's another, more daring theory. Some scholars suggest that these symbols might not be Chinese or Central Asian at all, but rather ancient Arabic script, possibly meaning "in the name of God." If this is true, it opens up a fascinating possibility. The individual buried in the tomb may have been a follower of Islam, or at least had connections to the Islamic world of that time. Now things start to feel much more complex, don't they? A single garment, yet layered with so many meanings. Beyond its design and materials, the motifs themselves carry deep symbolic significance. In ancient Persian culture, vultures were seen as protectors of the soul, while the tree of life symbolized immortality. Beaded details may represent the sun, a source of life and light. All of these elements combine into a message that people in the past may have intentionally left behind, yet one we still don't fully understand today. And that is what makes this discovery so special. It's not just an artifact, it's a doorway into the cultural exchange between East and West, a reminder that the ancient world may have been far more connected than we ever imagined. Ancient Greek tomb, containing human remains and chariots, reveals a shocking mystery. In the region of Thrace, located in northeastern Greece, a land once associated with legendary horse-riding warriors, archaeologists discovered a burial complex known as Decipher. Even at first mention, it already sounds like something extraordinary, and indeed it is. As excavations began, researchers quickly realized this was no ordinary tomb, because inside, they found not only human remains, but also chariots and horse skeletons. According to experts, the burial site dates back to the early 2nd century AD. Notably, it did not contain just one individual, but the remains of 4 members of the same family, 3 men and 1 woman. All are believed to have belonged to a wealthy landowning class, holding high status in their society. But what truly sets this tomb apart lies in its burial rituals. These 4 individuals were not simply laid to rest. They were placed in 4 separate large pits, surrounded by a wide array of grave goods, items made of clay, glass, and bronze, along with lamps, weapons, jewelry, and even wooden boxes. Everything seemed carefully arranged, as if preparing them for a long journey, a journey into the afterlife. Then came a detail that left everyone astonished. 5 chariots, the very vehicles that had carried the bodies to their burial site, were also placed and buried alongside them. And not just that, each chariot was accompanied by a horse. In total, 5 horses were sacrificed and buried as well. Just imagine that for a moment, a burial ritual in which both chariots and horses, valuable and powerful assets, were offered in this way. How high must this family's status have been? In ancient Thracian society, horses were more than just a means of transportation. They symbolized strength, power, and prestige. The warriors of this region were famous for their horseback combat, forming formidable cavalry forces. So burying horses with the dead wasn't only practical, it carried deep spiritual meaning. And what about the chariots? At that time, chariots were not merely vehicles. They represented technology and social rank. Only the wealthy and powerful could own them. Bringing chariots into the grave may have been a way to ensure that the deceased retained their status, even in the afterlife. To ancient people, death was not the end. Instead, it was seen as a continuation, a new existence where one would still need familiar things, tools, belongings, even symbols of power. That's why the Decipher tomb is more than just a burial site. It is a vivid portrait of the beliefs, culture, and way of life of an ancient civilization. And it makes us wonder, is what we're seeing only the tip of the iceberg? How many more secrets are still hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? Ancient rock art reveals an Egyptian invasion from 3,000 years ago. You know, our history is fascinating and mysterious. Sometimes it isn't written in words, it's carved into stone, painted on walls, quietly existing for thousands of years, waiting for the day modern humans finally uncover it. And when that day comes, what emerges isn't just imagery, it's an entire story behind it. In this next journey, I'll take you to two discoveries that may seem unrelated at first, yet together they open up a much broader picture of the ancient world, where power, belief, and mystery intertwine in ways we can hardly imagine. The first story begins at Wadi Kamila, located in the Sinai Peninsula, an area once within the sphere of influence of ancient Egypt. Here, archaeologists discovered a rock carving dating back roughly 3,000 years. At first glance, the carving immediately captures attention. At its center is the figure of a man striding forward, both arms raised as if displaying his strength. This posture doesn't just suggest physical power, it conveys authority and dominance. But just below, the scene shifts dramatically. Another man is shown kneeling, his hands bound behind his back with an arrow piercing his chest. The image needs no explanation. It is a symbol of defeat, of someone who has been conquered. Behind the kneeling figure appears a boat, seemingly a small detail, yet one with major significance. In ancient Egyptian culture, boats were not only means of transportation, but also symbols of power and control. When all these elements are put together, the rock carving appears to tell the story of a successful expedition, one in which the Egyptians conquered and asserted control over the Sinai region. In fact, researchers note that during the pre-dynastic, early dynastic, and Old Kingdom periods, Egyptian rulers frequently sent expeditions to this area to exploit its resources. This carving may well serve as a kind of visual record of those campaigns. Doesn't it feel like you're watching a moment from ancient history, frozen in stone? But the story doesn't end there. We now continue our journey to the northwestern coast of Peru, where another discovery has left archaeologists equally astonished. At a site known as Huaca Yolanda, researchers uncovered a massive mural dating back more than 3,000 years. What's truly remarkable is that despite thousands of years passing, the mural still retains its vibrant colors, blue, yellow, red, and black, as if it had been painted just yesterday. The wall stretches about 20 feet wide and nearly 10 feet high, standing silently for millennia, yet upon it unfolds an entire world. Fish, fishing nets, stars, mythical creatures, and human figures, all vividly depicted. On the southern side, a striking image stands out, a large bird, possibly an eagle or falcon, spreading its wings as if covering everything below. Meanwhile, the northern section features unusual cosmic symbols and figures resembling shamans. Together, these elements create a scene that feels both mystical and deeply symbolic. Dr. Mauricio described the moment of discovery with a single word: astonishing. She noted that nothing like this had ever been documented in the region before, making the mural truly one of a kind. According to researchers, this structure belongs to the early period, around 2000 to 1000 BC, a crucial era when the first complex societies began to form in Peru. And this raises an intriguing question. Why did ancient people create such cosmic imagery? Were they expressing their understanding of the universe or trying to send a message to the future? We may not have the answers yet, but as you can see, from the rock carvings in Sinai to the murals in Peru, there's one common thread. Thousands of years ago, humans were already trying to record what they believed, what they experienced, and what they wanted future generations to understand. Isn't that fascinating? 7 ancient swords and 6,000 coins reveal a hidden chapter of German history. During a routine survey in the small town of Murau, located in northern Germany, a place few would suspect of holding an invaluable historical treasure, a team of volunteer conservators from the State Office for Culture and Monument Protection unexpectedly discovered unusual signs beneath the ground. At first, they were only hoping to find small traces of the past, but as layer after layer of soil was removed, they realized they were standing in front of something far more significant. Fragments of ancient metal began to appear. At a glance, they seemed scattered and shapeless, but after careful collection and analysis, experts determined that these fragments were the remains of 7 ancient swords, dating back roughly 3,000 years, placing them in the Bronze Age. These swords had rested silently underground since a time when humans had not yet developed modern iron and steel. They were once forged by ancient craftsmen, possibly carried by warriors, used in battle, or even involved in sacred rituals. And that possibility is exactly what caught researchers' attention. They believe the swords were not simply abandoned. Instead, they may have been deliberately placed as part of a ritual offering, a practice common in many Bronze Age cultures where weapons were given to the gods as a way to seek protection or show reverence. But what made this discovery even more shocking was what they found nearby. As the excavation expanded, the team uncovered a large number of ancient silver coins, not dozens, not hundreds, but around 6,000 coins. Just hearing that, you can probably picture a real treasure, right? Most of these coins were found inside a ceramic vessel, as if someone had carefully hidden them long ago. However, many others were scattered across the ground, leaving archaeologists with a puzzling question. What exactly happened here? Was this a hidden treasure that was never recovered? Or the trace of a dramatic event, a battle, a sudden escape, or a disaster that prevented its owner from ever returning? According to experts, most of the coins were minted in what is now Western Germany and date back to around the 11th century AD. This detail is particularly fascinating because it shows that the site was used across multiple historical periods, from the Bronze Age, with its ancient swords, to the medieval era, with a massive cache of silver coins. And that's what makes this discovery truly unique. It's not just a single find, it's a layering of history. Different time periods coexisting in one place, forming a vivid timeline of human activity. Researchers believe that this collection of 6,000 silver coins may be the largest Slavic coin hoard ever discovered to date. This gives it not only material value, but also immense importance for understanding the region's economy, culture, and trade networks in the past. You see, from what seemed like a simple excavation, we're able to trace our way back thousands of years, touching the lives of ancient people through their weapons, their rituals, their currency, and their daily existence. And isn't that truly remarkable? As you can see, what makes these discoveries truly special may not be how strange they are, but the way they remind us that the past still holds countless untold stories. Every artifact, every mummy, every unsolved mystery is like a missing piece of history waiting to be completed. So, which discovery impressed you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel. For now, goodbye, and see you in the next video.